sticky CTA on the PDP. PLP, sticky filter. It's always a sticky something, isn't it?
There's always something sticky when we talk about circle jerking.
Who knew where this conversation was going to help?
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of From A to B. Jeff Shiva here, and I'm joined by David Zed Mannheim. Do you know why I call you Zed?
Girl, I'm guessing so. I'm assuming it's some kind of grammatical, linguistic, across the pond spelling.
You could just say, I don't know how to spell personalization.
Or optimization, just for reference.
Or optimization. Really, everything. You guys just don't know how to straight line the Z's. You put S's everywhere. I don't get it.
We could go into sidewalk. We could talk about that as opposed to pavement. A trash can as opposed to a bin. Fries as opposed to chip. We could go on and on if you'd like.
I just know I'm right. So, we could just end there and say Shiva knows what he's talking about because America.
Because America.
And if you are listening to this episode and you are in the US, drop a like and subscribe. And if you're in the UK, you're probably unsubscribing because you're like, dude, fuck this guy. I promise I love all the UK folks. So, David Zed Mannheim, you are the founder of Made with Intent.
Yes, sir.
You are very heavy in the personalization space, and you're someone who I've wanted to talk to a bit around personalization and experimentation. We had a call maybe 4 or 5 months ago. I don't remember what time is anymore. But specifically, the one thing that really stood out to me that you said was stages, not pages. It's beyond a buzzword of just saying, hey, it rhymes, so it's a fun thing. It actually means something pretty interesting and impactful. Before we get into how to apply that type of mindset and the type of thinking, what does stages, not pages, even mean?
I'm going to answer your question with another question. Do you think within CRO, within optimization, that we focus on user experience or page experience? And just think about the question, do we optimize for users, or more often than not, do we optimize for pages? What do you think, Shiva?
I would absolutely say users.
I would absolutely say pages. And the only reason why I say that is that in almost every company that I've worked with or been in or worked alongside of, everybody refers to templates, especially within the world of e-commerce. Homepage, PLP, PDP, basket, checkout. 5 arbitrary named templates with acronyms that almost become semi-redundant when we're talking about trying to optimize for users. It's almost as like, that feels quite hard. I'm going to instead look at a page, use it as a proxy for what a user is intending to do on that page, and optimize for that page. And I feel as though being so reduced down to these 5 templates feels like we've created some kind of homogenized, genericized environment where everything's the same. And instead, we do indeed optimize for pages rather than the stages, rather than the stage that the user's within, their job to be done, their mindset, their buying phase. However you'd like to describe it, stage is just a nice rhyming word, isn't it, towards pages.
So you said a lot of words. If I had to summarize that down, it's basically saying in the current state, many people are optimizing pages, not for the users that are getting there. For example, you might have a very high intent user on the homepage. You might have a very low intent user in the cart page. And one example of that I was thinking about a couple days ago is I didn't want to buy, but I wanted to test some coupon codes. So I am a low intent user because I want to know, do these coupon codes even work before even looking at the products they have available? So I'm testing out honey coupon codes in the checkout. I'm not ready to buy, but I'm in the cart. I think generally people correlate intent based on where they are in the page. And I think many times that makes sense. You're arguing that's not causational, that many times folks are maybe in different intent stages based on the page. So we have to layer on this intent of the user in addition to the page to actually optimize their experience.
Yeah, correct. By rule of thumb, I would say that the average add to cart ratio is 10%, i.e. for users who come or reach a PDP, about 10% of them add to cart. Okay, so what are the other 90% doing? They're not ready to buy. They're browsing, they're refining, they're evaluating the product. So we cater for the 10% by persuading them through social proof, scarcity, urgency, dare I say manipulative tactics. What about the other 90%? It does feel redundant.
I totally agree. And to argue more in your favor, I think, is those 10% who add to cart are maybe not even add to cart. Same example. Maybe they're testing a promo code. Maybe they're trying to look at shipping prices.
Yeah.
And your site doesn't show the shipping price. So they're still maybe in mid intent. You would think they're low intent, but they're still in mid intent.
Or saving for a later time. Or if you've got a high considered purchase that requires your partner or your family member to approve of it, the sizing of a sofa or something, they're just saving it or buying it for a gift. There are so many jobs to be done. We default to the natural assumption as though let's persuade people to buy within session.
I totally agree. And that's where I just love this mindset. I think many people are optimizing for pages, but we should be optimizing for those users, right?
Absolutely.
One thing I want to push on is high, and I think we're kind of talking a little bit about e-com. This applies to B2B too, but I'm giving e-com examples because I think sometimes they're easier to understand. Let's think about a high value item. Let's say cruises. That's something I've had experience with where there are almost two versions of the site. There's the purchasing version of the site and there's the deciding on what to buy. Very few people, and if you have this privilege, your friend needs some hookups. But basically, there's very few people who are like on the initial landing, they have decided they want to add a cruise to the cart and then just buy that day, right? If you have the privilege to spend like $4,000 on a cruise on a whim, you can find my email address at my first name, last name 91@gmail.com. That's my PayPal as well. But otherwise, right, like there are different intents. So maybe if we walked through an example of like a cruise site.
Sure, I've never been on a cruise. I didn't know you were a cruiser either. Have you been on cruises before?
Well, I worked at Norwegian Cruise Line for like a year, and then when I was a kid, we went on a bunch of cruises. I'm surprised you're not a Disney cruiser because you're the Disney boy. I was gonna say your nickname's Dave and Mickey Mannheim, but
it's actually Disney Dave. Maybe I shouldn't
Disney Dave.
That. Yeah, a lot of my university friends call me Disney Dave, or Mickey is just the Mickey Mannheim is just the other.
Mickey Mannheim kind of just rolls off the tongue. It sounds fire.
Yeah. If we had a girl, we got two boys, but if we had a girl, we were gonna potentially call her Minnie, but I think she would probably get bullied if that was the case. But sure, I've been on a Disney cruise once and it was throughout COVID, and we drove down to Southampton, we left the port, we roamed around the sea for a little bit and we came back. That was it. So that was my cruising experience, but I've never actually purchased one online. So like, what's that experience like?
Oh, that's interesting. At this time, there's still a lot of people who are still ordering from is you ordered from a travel agent or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a bunch of people ordering from travel agents because sometimes it's just a lot of hard work to figure out cruising and discounts and all that stuff. Maybe that's an indication towards like the social proof and the trust from someone is not that high on some of these websites. So people maybe are picture shopping on these cruise sites. When it comes to ultimately purchase, they're going through another avenue. That's maybe another signal towards intent being so important, towards understanding if that person is coming to your site, they have no intention of ever buying from your site directly. My parents don't do that. They love going on cruises, but they don't know how to use websites, right? And it's a lot of money that they don't want to just give the credit card to the website. It's a trust thing. But they're still going to buy a cruise. They're still going to make money. Knowing that their intent is, I just want to browse. I want to see all the beautiful pictures. I want to see all the excursions. I want to see all the cool things I could do on the ship. That's where you wouldn't want to know what that signal is for that user. Basic pages are not as helpful as populating those pages based on that intent of that user.
Well, I think a really good example, if your parents are just browsing, so their mindset, their buying phase is browsing. An average journey would typically be homepage, and then look at me talking pages, homepage, and then they're searching, they get a list of cruises, and then let's say they visit a cruise page. Okay, I don't know, Norwegian around the fjords or something. Just because they're on that page does not mean that they're committing to a purchase, evaluating that cruise. They are still in browsing mode. Their signals suggest they're in browsing mode. For example, flipping back between those two pages, the amount of time it takes on said page, clicking on recommendations. Their buying state is browsing. And as a result, the cruise retailer in that instance should be catering for that browsing stage in order to be more appropriate. I think that's the key word here, is appropriateness, surely.
It's very interesting because 2 points. One, when I was at Norwegian, I ran a test where when they are on the cruise search results, filtering page, whatever, if you had the individual cruises open up in a new tab, that increased conversion rate versus the same tab because people were comparing multiple cruises.
Nice.
That was a very fun test that proved that point. Well, will that work for everyone? No. But that was based on that data that multiple people were clicking on the tabs and their intent, like you mentioned, at least for a lot of those folks, was browsing. Their intent from the home page to the search page to the cruise page stayed exactly the same, right?
Exactly.
They just got to the information, but their intent was exactly the same.
Exactly. I think that proves the point, does it not?
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I'm supporting you. This is kind of a circle jerk towards your point of calling the stages, not pages.
Of jerk circling. I think one of the things
I don't think you know what circle jerk means.
Oh, I do, unfortunately.
Okay.
There's a Bo Burnham line. Are you a Bo Burnham? I think I've given you some Bo Burnham lyrics before.
Yeah.
There's a Bo Burnham line called, I won't even go into it because it's disgusting. One of the things I think that really frustrated me, that led to not this conclusion or this rhyming state, but this philosophy, was the concept of social proof. I think really bothers me. I think it's the most manipulative, disgusting, highly influential tactic that's available to us. And yes, I'm aware of Cialdini's principles. And yes, all the SaaS products that offer this, it has a net positive.
Can I ask you a question on that?
Yeah, go for it.
Is it the execution of social proof, or is it the idea in theory of social proof?
I think it's the execution.
I totally agree. Because I see all these posts on LinkedIn and Instagram of like, it's an advertisement veiled as social proof, where it's for like some food delivery company. And they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. My dog ate your food, but I came home and got you one of my own food. By the way, it's low calorie. It'll heat up in 2. And I'm like, dude, this is so obviously an advertisement. It's so cringe. And all the comments are like, dude, this is so cringe. To me, the social proof is not the problem in the theory. It's the execution of people just throwing it constantly, cherry picking, finding the best things. And yeah, I totally agree.
Well, it's tactical. It's a tactical execution that is designed to do what? It's designed to increase some kind of urgency to purchase or create an action there and then.
Urgency or motivation? Or both? I guess maybe urgency as proxy of motivation. Yeah, okay.
One of my favorite quotes in my book is by an ex-FBI director of all.
Subtle plug.
I only get 58p per copy, dude. I don't care. But it is here, available on Amazon. Spelled
What's the book called?
The Person in Personalization with an S.
Personalization. Got it.
And it's by an ex-FBI director called Robin Dreeke. And he said, the difference between persuasion and manipulation is intent. What he's basically saying there is that context is everything. Do not give everybody everything, only to impact a few. Understand the context of the user or the person, and then be more appropriate to their state of mind or well-being or buying stage in what we're discussing.
So we're thinking about cohorts when it comes to optimization for our users. I love the frame of like, what are we optimizing for? Pages or users? Absolutely users. But users are not all the same. Many users are different. Desktop versus mobile, different site, perhaps different users, different intent, different motivation.
Correct, yeah.
Paid search versus organic versus direct. Same thing, different intent signals. These intent signals are maybe an aggregation or at the very least a cohort of being able to lean in on my definition of personalization is just advanced segmentation and experimentation, advanced cohorting. In that realm, what you're doing is if you have one website for everyone, you're trying to boil the ocean. Start cohorting, start creating these unique experiences for your users. ABM marketing is another one of those like personalization pieces, account-based marketing for acronym folks. So anyway, like I think this is such an important thing for you to consider, is this advanced cohorting for these users. And so many people just fail to understand that like the intent matters. Understanding what that intent of your user is important because everyone tests like, oh, test sticky CTAs. It's a best practice, blah, blah, blah. Dude, it don't matter if you put the CTA as like 700 pixels on a mobile phone. If they don't want to buy, they don't want to buy. It leads to intent, which I guess is adjacent to motivation. Some of these tests, like you have to understand the intent. Otherwise, you can't optimize if you don't know what they're trying to do.
Here, well said. You know what I've been playing around with recently is this idea that any kind of segmentation is just a proxy for intent. I haven't quite formulated this in my head just yet, but let's roll with me. Let's play this out, okay?
I love it.
In my book, The Person in Personalization, available on Amazon now for $11.99, one of the biggest questions that I got asked is, where do you start? When it comes to personalization or segmentation, let's just assume they're the same right now. Where do you start? And people went to user type, new versus returning. They went to source, campaign, PPC, traffic, organic.
Yep.
and they went to device. Those were location dependent on the site, but those were like the top three. And if you think about it, they're all in some case some kind of proxy for intent, like mobile, more browsing than purchasing. The more direct you are in organic and dependent on where you land, perhaps, the higher intent you're supposed to or assumed to have because you've already been to the site and you know what you may or may not want. New versus returning, something similar, you're more accustomed to the site. So everything, in theory, am I wrong in saying this? Everything is a proxy for intent?
Maybe motivation. And I don't know if those two words are synonymous. I think they're accomplishing the same thing in my head of what you're saying is the motivation for a mobile user is maybe to do more browsing if they want. And this is just context dependent. I'm making a general rule. This is just me making up something here. If your intent on mobile for a cruise site is to just browse, look at some pretty pictures, check it out. Maybe even on desktop, there's a large chunk of those folks who are browsing. But once you've detected the motivation increase, they've emailed themselves the cruise. That's a signal that maybe tells you, oh, +1 on the intent, +1 on the motivation. We have now detected their intent is a little bit higher. Therefore, the motivation has increased. So maybe they're synonymous, but I agree. I think everything does come down to like what are they trying to do? Being able to not only detect the signals, because I think detection of the signals is important, but let me push on you a little bit to understand what can we do with those signals. Data is cool if you have a bunch of data, but if you don't do anything with it, what's the point? Once we know, let's say in this cruise example, we detect the intent, they've browsed a couple pages on mobile, and we've now maybe detected some signals that their intent has increased. What would be some of those signals that we could use to say intent is increasing, or maybe flip side, what are signals that intent is decreasing? Easy one would probably be exiting the site.
Yeah.
What can we do with that information to actually personalize, optimize?
There's two questions there. There's like input and output. The input being, how do you detect signals? And we don't need to go into what we do at Made with Intent because I would say that's a fairly advanced form of trying to identify someone's level of intent. But there are two effective ways, implicit and explicit. You just ask or you infer, And in the asking, obviously, you don't ask, hey, what is your intent, by the way? Can we just find out? Just help us out a little bit?
You could ask. You probably won't get much engagement, but you could ask.
You could, but like product quizzes are a really good way to do that, where you can explicitly identify somebody's not just level of intent, but affinity. Oh, and by the way, those are two very different things. And the way I generally describe it, Shiva, is intent and affinity is like the strength and direction of intent. Affinity, the direction of intent is, do I want the Norwegian fjord cruise or the, oh God, help me out here, Caribbean cruise, the direction. The strength of intent is how much do I want the Norwegian fjord cruise. The concept of personalization has largely been driven down into direction of intent, affinity. Hey, hence hashtag product recommendations are anywhere and everywhere. So I think that's a really good delineation, and that's the input.
So product quiz is a fantastic example to have explicit tags towards a signal of intent. I think it's important to note that just because they've entered the quiz, it doesn't mean automatically their intent is higher than those who don't enter the quiz. Different strokes for different folks. Some people might enter the quiz because they want to learn. There are other signals that might help corroborate that. So you talked about explicit. Ask, tell me, show me some information.
Yeah.
We talk about stages, not pages. A product page visit is not an implicit increase in motivation. What are some signals that would indicate implicit motivation increases or intent increases? There's
loads, right? I often find that the meaning is hidden in between the actions. So there's two really nice forms of implicit signals that I like to use, which is time and specificity. So Shiva, when I came to visit you in Austin, I went to Whole Foods because I panicked and I didn't know where to eat. And I knew that I wanted a smoothie. What do I do when I want a smoothie? I know where the smoothie aisle is, so I'm more specific in my actions and I'll get there quicker than if I didn't know I wanted the smoothie. So time and specificity, they're like really two nice inferences that suggest a level of intent. It's why people claim that, search bar has a higher conversion than everything else. Well, of course it does. It has a different level of intent. And I think because of the specificity that's required within a search element to motivation, that's generally why you find that.
I totally agree. A lot of people have said, a bunch of people are site searching, so that must increase conversion rate. So let's make the site search box super big. I think that's the general theme around this whole conversation is correlation does not equal causation, especially when it comes to that intent, especially with pages, could be components on the site in general. You have to layer on additional data points to validate or invalidate the intent.
I agree. We actually did something really cool that I think you might like, which is we took a heat map of a page of a product and we segment it by low intent and high intent.
How low intent and high intent based on made with intents categorization of intent.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yep.
So the signals then therefore segmenting the user base of the same page. And I don't have the exact numbers to hand, but there were things like click on the delivery information. Those in the higher intent cohort had a, say 22, I think it was, % more likelihood of clicking on delivery information. That's a really good signal to let you know that there's some kind of logistical reasoning going on in this purchase of the user. I.e. not just I'm interested in the product, but I'm interested in how I get the product.
Right.
I think that's a really nice example. There are other examples like clicking on more images and what have you. I just can't remember them. There are little signals and you could evaluate those yourself. I would just say that what you're trying to get to is a point of appropriateness. The more appropriate you are, the more impact you create. And that's in anything in life, not just in selling online.
I love it. So if we had to recap all of this that we've talked about, for me, my biggest takeaways is just in the fact that a lot of times people causate things that should be correlative. They do so based on a single data point. Many times that single data point is more product page visits equals more intent. And I don't think that's correct. You have to layer on other data points. And there are many data points. That's the basis of your product made with intent, is taking all of these data points to try your best to understand what that intent looks like. So you could pull the levers to either increase the intent or the users with maybe that mid or low intent, give them the information that they need so they could have a successful site visit. At some point, their motivation increases externally through the site, or externally, not through the site, internally, whatever that may be. Same thing with cruises. It don't matter if the cruise is the best thing in the world. If my paycheck doesn't hit until 2 weeks and I don't have any money in my bank account, it doesn't matter if my intent is high. Sometimes there's just external factors that you may not have any control over. Do your best to try and understand these intent-based signals, these motivation-based signals, and don't create this one-size-fits-all. Really hone in on this advanced segmentation personalization because there's a lot of value. Would you add anything to that?
Focus on just question whether what you're doing, especially if you're an e-commerce site listening to this, just really ask yourself what you're doing. Are you doing page optimization or user optimization? I actually think being really like a really little smart ass, I've caught a few people out with that question because it makes them think. If you look at, you know how we all name experiments? Usually it's like an ID followed by a small title. That small title will be PDP redesign, sticky CTA on the PDP, PLP, sticky filter. It's always a sticky something, isn't it? Let's not go back to circle jerking.
There's always something sticky when we talk about circle jerking.
Who knew where this conversation was going to help?
I'm going to have to make sure I tag this as not safe for work. Explicit.
Oh, man. Yeah. No, but well said, dude. Well said.
One last question for you before we jump into the LinkedIn post of the week.
Ooh, yeah.
Define personalization.
Personalization is being more personable. It's really as simple as that. It's just conflated with other things. We don't need to get into what those other things are, recommendation and segmentation, but personalization is just being more personal. Simple as that.
I would push you any more, but we are out of time and we have to run to the LinkedIn post of the week. So let's jump into the LinkedIn post of the week. Okay, doke. LinkedIn. Oh, wow. That's a word. LinkedIn post of the week time. Not Linky post of the week. This LinkedIn post of the week comes courtesy of Eden Bidani. Eden, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. This post showed up in my feed. Also, anything Eden does, I just automatically like because it's everything she says is super smart. But one thing that stood out to me in this particular post was relevant to personalization and this talk around stages, not pages. What she says, and I quote, "The hardest thing about marketing is not that you don't have enough to say about your product. It's that you have too much to say about your product." I think that is one of the things that really resonates with me about this stages, not pages thing, because to that point, people are fitting copy into these arbitrary pages because there are these arbitrary stages as definitions of these pages. What leads someone to want to go to a product page? Well, you might actually need some powerful copy on the category level or even on the homepage level to get them to be motivated enough, have high enough intent to want to go to a product page to explore more or even keep them on your site. And someone who maybe is searching, you know, I was working at Solo Stove for a little bit. That's fresh on my mind because it's going to be cold as balls in the next couple of days. So I'm going to probably light up a fire in my backyard. Controlled. I'm not going to like burn my house down. I'm not
good to know.
if someone goes to Solo Stove and they search fire pits and then they click on a product page and go to Solo Stove, one of the challenges I was trying to solve for was a lot of users coming to that product page. They know it's a fire pit and like it's fire in a pit. What more is there? But why Solo Stove? What is the value that you get from this product versus the others? Sure, they landed on a product page, but that doesn't mean their intent was higher.
Exactly.
And that's where the copy is so important. Sometimes you don't have enough copy and you think, to your point, stages, not pages. Product page, get them to add to cart as quickly as possible. That's the goal. No. This is my first time visit coming to your site. I'm going to need some copy. I'm going to need some more information. I need to see some photos. Tell me about your product because this is my first visit. And I think that is kind of full circle in the conversation about intent on pages.
I like it, dude. It's not just the inclusion of copy or the absence of copy, it's the hierarchy and prioritization of copy. If you have 10 USPs for why people should pick your brand, focus on the USP. If someone has a really high level of intent, you might want to tell people, I don't know, about the warranty that comes with the glasses. Whereas if they have a lower level intent, maybe talk about the quality of the frames and the lenses or the sustainability. Think about the hierarchy in relation to the intent of the user.
To take a step back, like glasses is a binary. You need glasses or you don't, right? Like you need to see. Think about some of these other maybe luxury purchase, such as a fire pit. What's the purpose of a fire pit in general? Because yeah, you have a fire in your backyard, but I didn't get fire pits until like got fire pits. I'm not trying to circle jerk. I'm not trying to like totally blow up Solo Stove. I genuinely love the product. It's cool. I didn't get it until I got it. When I lit that first fire in my backyard, it was cool. I couldn't stop staring at this thing. So there's like primal nature in you to just want to look at fire. Maybe just me. Maybe I'm inherently a pyromaniac.
It's you, yeah.
And some of this maybe isn't as relevant to Eden's post around copy. And maybe there's images for this particular company. Maybe cruise the same thing. Maybe you need to focus on that. But maybe someone coming to your site, they need to justify the money for a cruise. They haven't even decided they want a cruise. They have $4,000 and they're like, well, I could fly to Italy, I could fly to Thailand, or I could take a cruise, or I could do this. So maybe they haven't even decided to take a cruise. And you have to have that information to meet them where they are. I don't know if maybe you could correlate that with intent more than take signals to try and understand the information that they need, because maybe their intent is, I want a vacation. And that's high, but they have low intent for a cruise and maybe low intent for vacation. I think generally speaking, Eden's point is so impactful because don't talk too much to your users and don't just brain dump everything good. Understand the page, understand the user coming to that page, and then serve them the copy that makes the most sense, serve them the experience that makes the most sense for them.
I don't know what else to add, apart from yes, I agree. An example of a really poor version of that we see day in, day out is go to any website. I don't know if you experienced it when buying your fire pit. You go, fire pit, land on website, wherever the page is, boom, 10% off. It's so inappropriate. Or email newsletter, it feels so inappropriate.
It's funny because I think that's a mindset of people just checkbox doing things because everyone else is doing it. Chatbots is another example, right? You land on the site and the first thing you see is chatbot. First thing you see is pop-up. I have a log of this now. When I land on the site, because they've detected me as a new user, it's, we need your notification, and that's a Chrome pop-up. And I'm like, no, you don't. And then the next thing is the 5-10%, whatever, promo code. Close that. And then it's like a little slide out that says, log in. And I'm like, no. And then I close that. So it's 3 things that have all popped up at the same time because they don't know my intent. So just like copy isn't just throw all this shit at the wall and see what sticks. UX has to have that same mindset of don't just throw everything and just see hopefully something works, because you're going to piss them off more than like actually get something out of it.
The reason why that happens is because of this innate concept within commerce, which is more is more. The more we do something, the more we put in the top of the hopper, the more we get out of it.
Yeah.
And yes, there's optimization that goes in between those two things. I would argue that quality trumps quantity.
100%.
Every time. So focus on the quality and the appropriateness of the interaction rather than the amount of times the interaction exists.
Let me ask you one more question, because this just popped up in my head. Rishi has posted a couple times. I don't mean to misquote him. I believe this is what he says. Focus on the 10% of the users coming to your site who at some point will probably buy. They have mid to high intent. Don't focus on the 90% of bouncers because they probably never would have bought from you anyway. I think that's an interesting maybe counter argument or counterpoint to your idea of like, Well, no. But there's 90% who you can influence.
Yeah.
And maybe there's a layer of, if you're a small business, you have to focus on the 10% to be profitable versus if you're a big business with a bunch of resources, you could spend more time in optimizing that 90%.
That's the whole 80-20 rule, isn't it? I don't disagree with Rashid, but I don't see it as black and white as going to buy, not going to buy. That's the binary outcome. There's, going to buy, has potential to buy, and will definitely not buy, for example, and probably everything in between. And I'm just saying there needs to be a bit of a balance rather than a myopic focus. And currently, in the industry or industries, we have a myopic focus.
I love it. That's a bonus LinkedIn post of the week for anyone listening to this point.
It's so long.
Cool. Well, that wraps up for another episode of From A to B. David Z. Mannheim. Please let the folks know where they could find you and some of the cool things that you're working on.
LinkedIn, usually I post, a few times a week and what have you. But yeah, Made with Intent is my baby. It's something I really care about. Having more empathy towards people on the other side of the screen.
You put the person in personalization.
You got it. It sounds like a really catchy name for a book as well. Maybe someone should do that.
Wait, was that the name of your book?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Oh, I thought it was being original. Just subconsciously, I just remembered that. Well, actually, no, that was a plug. I did that on purpose, right? That makes sense.
Sure. You definitely have read my book. I'm sure you have.
Well, you haven't sent it to me. You haven't sent me the autographed copy that you said you would.
Oh, yeah. It's just too expensive to ship to America. Sorry, dude.
You could have brought it with you when you came to CXL. That's on you, bro.
Forgot. Okay.
Cool. Well, thanks, y'all, for tuning in. If you're new to the podcast, please drop a sub. We appreciate y'all. Thanks so much for tuning in.